The subway platform smelled like burnt coffee and rain. Maya checked her watch, 6:15 in the evening, rush hour. The best time to play when hundreds of tired people streamed past, some with enough loose change or sympathy to drop something in her case. She'd been doing this for 3 years now. 3 long years of standing in the same spot, playing the same songs, watching the same faces hurry by without really seeing her. Most days she didn't mind. The music kept her company, and the money kept her family afloat. That's all that mattered anymore. Maya opened her trumpet case and pulled out her instrument. It wasn't fancy. The brass had lost its shine years ago, and there was a small dent near the bell that she'd never bothered to fix. But it played true, and that's what counted. She'd bought it used when she was 16 with money from her first job. Back then, she'd dreamed of concert halls and standing ovations. Back then, she'd believed anything was possible. She warmed up with a few scales, letting her fingers remember the familiar positions. The platform was filling up nicely. People clustered near the edge, staring at their phones, waiting for the next train. Perfect. She launched into her opening number, a smooth jazz piece that usually got people's attention without being too demanding. The first 20 minutes went like they always did. A few people dropped coins. One woman smiled and mouthed beautiful as she passed. A teenager recorded a few seconds on his phone before getting distracted by a text message. Maya played on, letting muscle memory guide her through the melody while her mind wandered to the bills waiting at home. Her mother's medication had gone up again. The pharmacy had called yesterday with the new price. Maya had done the math in her head. 3 more subway sessions this week, maybe 4. She could manage it. She always managed it somehow. Then she saw him. He was tall. Maybe in his early 40s, with graying hair pulled back in a small ponytail. He carried a professional-grade equipment bag, the kind that cost more than Maya made in a month. But it was the trumpet case in his other hand that made her stop playing mid-note. He was walking directly toward her spot. Maya had been performing at this exact location for 2 years. Everyone knew it was her territory. The other street musicians respected boundaries. You didn't set up where someone else was already established. It was the unwritten rule that kept things civilized down here in the tunnels, but this man clearly didn't care about rules. He stopped about 30 feet away, close enough that their music would clash, far enough to claim it wasn't intentional. Maya watched as he set down his equipment with the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. He didn't look her way, didn't acknowledge her presence at all. She felt anger rising in her chest. This was her spot, her income, her survival. The man opened his case and pulled out a trumpet that gleamed even under the harsh fluorescent lights. It was a professional instrument, probably worth more than everything Maya owned. He ran through a quick warm-up, and even those simple scales sounded effortless, polished in a way that made Maya's 3 years of subway performances feel amateur. People were already turning to look at him. That was the worst part, not just that he'd invaded her space, but that he was clearly skilled enough to steal her audience. Maya considered packing up and leaving, finding another platform, another spot, even though those precious rush hour minutes were ticking away. But something stubborn inside her refused to back down. She'd worked too hard, given up too much to let some entitled musician push her out. She lifted her trumpet back to her lips and played. Not the gentle jazz she'd been performing. This time she chose something with teeth. A bebop riff she'd learned in high school, fast and technical, designed to show off. If he wanted competition, she'd give him competition. The man's head turned slightly. He'd heard her challenge. For a moment, nothing happened. The crowds kept flowing around them, trains came and went, and the 2 musicians stood separated by 30 feet of concrete and pride. Then he played. His response was immediate and electric. He took her bebop riff and turned it inside out, adding flourishes and runs that made the melody dance in ways Maya hadn't imagined. It wasn't aggressive exactly, but it was definitely an answer, a statement that said, "I hear you and I can do better." Maya felt her pulse quicken. This wasn't anger anymore. This was something else entirely. Something she hadn't felt since before her mother got sick, before the bills piled up, before music became just another way to survive. This was excitement. She answered him with a melody of her own creation, weaving between major and minor keys, letting emotion guide her fingers rather than technique. Where his playing was polished and perfect, hers was raw and honest. Where he showcased skill, she showcased soul. The effect on the crowd was immediate. People stopped walking. The usual flow of commuters hitting the stairs slowed to a trickle as more and more travelers paused to watch. Some pulled out their phones. Others just stood there, caught in the unexpected magic of two musicians locked in musical combat. The man stepped closer, still playing, moving into her space with deliberate confidence. Maya held her ground. Their melodies intertwined now, sometimes clashing, sometimes harmonizing, always pushing each other further. He switched to Latin rhythms, bright and percussive. Maya countered with classical technique, letting her conservatory training, those 2 precious years before everything fell apart, shine through. He played high and fast. She played low and soulful. He showed off his range. She showed off her heart. 10 minutes became 20. 20 became 30. Neither of them stopped. The crowd around them had grown massive. Maya could see phones recording from every angle, could hear people whispering excitedly, could feel the energy building like electricity in the air. She was breathing hard now, her lips starting to tire from the constant pressure, but she couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. This duel had become something more than protecting her territory. It had become the first real musical conversation she'd had in years. The man seemed to sense it too. His playing shifted, became less about competition and more about collaboration. He left space for her to fill. She did the same for him. Without discussing it, without even making eye contact, they found a rhythm that worked. When a train pulled into the station, they both paused, letting the mechanical screech and rumble pass. In that moment of silence, Maya finally looked at him directly. He was smiling. Not a smug smile or a challenging one, a real smile. The smile of someone who'd just remembered why they loved music in the first place. The train doors closed. People rushed away toward their destinations, but a solid core of the crowd remained, waiting to see what would happen next. The man lowered his trumpet and walked toward Maya. She tensed, unsure what to expect. An apology? A confrontation? A demand that she leave? Instead, he extended his hand. "That was incredible," he said simply. His voice was warm, genuine. "I haven't played like that in years." Maya stared at his outstretched hand, her trumpet still raised defensively. Around them, the crowd waited, phones still recording, capturing whatever would happen next. This stranger had invaded her space, challenged her authority, and turned her ordinary evening into something extraordinary. She had no idea who he was or what he wanted. But looking at his smile and the respect in his eyes, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. Something that had been frozen for 3 long years suddenly cracked and warmed. She lowered her trumpet and shook his hand. His name was Vincent, and he had a proposition that sounded completely crazy. 2 weeks, he said, counting the bills that people had thrown into both their cases during the duel. We perform together, split everything 50-50 and see what happens. Maya looked at the money in her case. It was more than she usually made in 3 days. The crowd had been incredibly generous, caught up in the energy of their unexpected performance. But partnering with a stranger? That went against every survival instinct she'd developed over the past 3 years. "I work alone," she said, already packing up her trumpet. "Thanks for the show, but this is my spot. Tomorrow, find your own." Vincent didn't argue. He just nodded, handed her half of the money from his case without being asked, and walked away. Maya watched him go, feeling an odd mixture of relief and disappointment. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the duel in her mind, remembering how it felt to really play again. Not just perform for spare change, but actually connect with music the way she used to. The way she thought she'd forgotten how to. Her phone buzzed around midnight. A text from her younger brother, Carlos. "You're famous, Lowell." Attached was a video link. Maya clicked it. Someone had uploaded their duel to social media. The video had 40,000 views already and comments were pouring in. "Who are these people? Best subway performance ever. The woman in the blue jacket is incredible." The woman in the blue jacket. That was her. Maya Rodriguez, who'd given up on being seen as a real musician years ago, who'd accepted that she was just background noise in other people's busy lives. She watched the video 3 more times before finally falling asleep. The next evening, Maya arrived at her usual spot 15 minutes early. She told herself it was just to secure her territory, to make sure Vincent understood the boundaries. That's all. But when he showed up at 6 o'clock, she didn't tell him to leave. 1 week, she said instead. Trial run. And we need ground rules. Vincent's face lit up. Whatever you want. They established a system. They'd perform Tuesday through Saturday, rush hour only. Maya got to approve all song choices since it was her regular spot. Tips would be counted together at the end of each session. No personal questions, no life stories. This was business. The first night of their partnership was rough. They kept stepping on each other's melodies, unsure when to lead and when to follow. The magic of their spontaneous duel didn't translate to planned performance. By the end of the evening, they'd made decent money, but Maya felt frustrated. This isn't working, she said. Counting out Vincent's half, it's been one night. We sound like we're fighting. Not playing together. Vincent packed his trumpet carefully before responding. Maybe that's because we don't know each other. Music is conversation. Can't have a good conversation with a stranger who won't tell you anything? I told you, no personal stuff. Then we'll stay strangers who happen to play instruments near each other. He was right, and Maya hated that he was right. She'd spent 3 years carefully building walls between herself and everyone around her. It was safer that way. Less complicated. But those walls were killing the music. The second night, she tried something different. Between songs, while a train was passing, she asked him a simple question. Why did you pick my spot that first day? Vincent looked surprised. Honestly, I didn't know it was your spot. I'd just gotten kicked out of my regular platform. Security said I needed a permit I didn't have. I was angry and not paying attention. Then I heard you playing and I just reacted. You could have apologized and moved. I could have. But watching you play, seeing how you poured everything into that music even though half the crowd ignored you, it reminded me of something I'd lost. So I stayed. Selfishly, I guess, it wasn't much. Just a small crack in the wall. But that night, their performance flowed better. They learned to read each other's breathing, to anticipate changes in tempo and mood. The crowd noticed. The tips reflected it. By the fourth night, they'd developed routines. They opened with an upbeat jazz number to grab attention. Then they'd slow things down with a soulful ballad. The finale was always improvisation, musical conversation where anything could happen. More importantly, during the breaks between sets, they started talking. Real talking. Vincent told her about his career. He'd been a session musician for 15 years, good enough to work with major artists but never quite good enough to become one himself. 2 years ago, he'd walked away from a lucrative recording contract because the producer wanted him to compromise his sound. The industry had quietly blacklisted him for it. His wife had left shortly after, tired of financial instability and broken promises. The subway platforms became his refuge when studio doors closed. Maya shared less, but she shared something. She told him about Juilliard, about the full scholarship she'd earned at 18, about the 2 glorious years studying music before her mother's diagnosis changed everything, the medical bills that consumed her college fund, the choice between her dreams and her family's survival. You gave up Juilliard? Vincent's voice carried a mix of respect and sadness. I didn't give it up. Life just took it away. That's not the same thing, you know. One means you quit. The other means you're just waiting for another chance. Maya didn't respond to that. She wasn't sure she believed in second chances anymore. Their reputation grew quickly. By the end of the first week, regular commuters started timing their travel to catch their performances. People would stand through multiple trains just to watch them finish a set. The smartphone videos multiplied across social media. Maya stopped reading the comments. They made her uncomfortable, like she was being seen in a way she'd trained herself to avoid. On Friday of the second week, a woman in an expensive suit approached them after their final set. She handed Vincent a business card. I'm a talent scout for the Riverside Music Festival, she said. We're looking for an authentic opening act. Something raw and real. You two are exactly what we need. Maya felt her stomach drop. This was the kind of opportunity that didn't happen to subway performers. The kind of break that could change everything. The woman continued. The festival is 3 weeks away. Saturday night, main stage. 30-minute set. The pay is substantial, and the exposure would be significant. Vincent looked at Maya with barely contained excitement. She could see how much he wanted this, how much he needed to prove he still belonged in the professional music world. Can we think about it? Maya asked. The woman smiled. Of course. But I need an answer by Monday. We have other options if you're not interested. After she left, Vincent turned to Maya. Are you serious? This is incredible. Why would you need to think about it? Because that's the same weekend as my brother's graduation. I already promised I'd be there. It's just a high school graduation. He'll have other milestones. This festival could change our lives. Maya felt anger flare hot in her chest. Just a graduation? That's easy to say when you don't have a 17-year-old brother who's watched his sister disappear into work for 3 years, who feels guilty every time I pay a bill or buy groceries because he knows it's my music money. My sacrifice. Vincent stepped back, hands raised. I'm sorry. You're right. I didn't mean. You never mean it. People never mean it when they tell you to choose yourself over family. But they're not the ones who have to live with that choice. She packed her trumpet quickly, took her half of the evening's tips, and left without saying goodbye. That weekend, she didn't go to the platform. She stayed home, helping her mother with physical therapy exercises and watching Carlos study for his finals. She told herself she'd made the right decision. The festival was just a fantasy anyway. Real life was here, in this small apartment with the people who depended on her. But Sunday night, Carlos knocked on her bedroom door. I know about the festival, he said quietly. Maya's heart sank. How? Vincent came by this afternoon. He wanted to make sure you were okay. Told me everything. She waited for her brother to thank her for choosing him, for his graduation. That's what usually happened when she made sacrifices. Grateful acceptance that made the weight feel slightly lighter. Instead, Carlos sat on her bed and looked at her with eyes older than his years. When's the last time you did something for yourself? He asked. I do things for myself all the time. Name one. In the last year, name one thing you did just because you wanted to, not because you had to or because someone needed you to. Maya opened her mouth and then closed it. She couldn't think of a single thing. I don't want to be your excuse anymore, Carlos said, his voice cracking slightly. I don't want to be the reason you gave up on everything. That's not love. That's just guilt and obligation dressed up to look like love. That's not fair. Maybe not. But it's true. He left her sitting there in the dark, with his words echoing in her mind and the sound of her own heartbeat too loud in her ears. Monday morning, Maya texted Vincent. I'm in. Let's do the festival. Vincent met her at the platform that evening with coffee and relief written all over his face. He didn't say anything about her decision, didn't push for explanations. He just handed her the cup and started unpacking his trumpet. We have 3 weeks, Maya said. We need to be better than good. We will be. They practiced every day, not just at the subway platform during rush hour, but in the mornings at a community center that let Vincent use a rehearsal room in exchange for teaching kids music on weekends. Maya would show up at 7 before her mother woke up, and they'd run through their set until her fingers ached. The festival wanted 30 minutes of original material. Not covers, not standards, music that belonged to them. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. We need a story, Vincent said during their 5th morning session. Every great performance tells a story. What's ours? Maya sat on the worn piano bench, her trumpet resting on her knees. I don't know. 2 broke musicians who got lucky? That's not a story. That's just facts. He played a soft melody, something melancholy. Music is about truth. So what's the truth? Why do you play? To pay bills. That's why you perform. I asked why you play. The question bothered her for the rest of the day. She found herself thinking about it while helping her mother with lunch, while reviewing Carlos's college application essays, while lying in bed unable to sleep. Why did she play? The next morning she had an answer. I play because it's the only time I get to be selfish, she told Vincent. When I'm playing, those few minutes are mine. Not my mother's caretaker, not my brother's backup parent, not the responsible one who always has to have answers. Just me and the music. That's the only place I still exist as just Maya. Vincent nodded slowly. I play because it's the only conversation I ever won. Words get twisted, people misunderstand, relationships fall apart. But music always says exactly what I mean. Even when nobody's listening, at least I know I said it right. They looked at each other across the rehearsal room and something clicked. The story wasn't about luck or opportunity. It was about 2 people who'd lost themselves and found each other through the only language they still trusted. That became the foundation of their set. They built 3 pieces around it, beginning, middle, and here. The first captured early passion, when music felt like possibility. The second reflected loss and compromise, the death of dreams. The third was about rediscovery, about finding yourself again in unexpected places. Their subway performances became testing grounds. They'd try new arrangements, watch crowd reactions, adjust and refine. Some nights it worked beautifully. Other nights they'd argue afterward about tempo or transitions, standing on the platform until the last train ran. "You're rushing the bridge in middle," Vincent said after a particularly rough Thursday session. "I'm not rushing. You're dragging. I'm maintaining the emotion. You're treating it like a technical exercise. Maybe because you're wallowing in it. Not everything has to be tragic." They went home angry that night, and Maya wondered if this whole partnership was a mistake. Maybe she was better off alone, relying only on herself. At least then the only person who could disappoint her was in the mirror. But Friday morning, Vincent showed up at the rehearsal room with sheet music covered in notes. "I reworked the bridge," he said. "Gave you more space to breathe between phrases." "Try it." She tried it. "'Twas perfect. How'd you know?" she asked. "Because I listened. You were right. I was dragging. I was so caught up in my own feelings about the piece that I forgot we're supposed to be having a conversation." That's when Maya realized something important. Vincent wasn't like the other people in her life who took and took until she had nothing left to give. He was paying attention. He was adjusting. He was meeting her halfway. The realization scared her more than the upcoming festival. With 1 week left before the performance, the talent scout arranged for them to see the venue. The Riverside Festival stage was massive. Professional sound equipment, lighting rigs, space for thousands of people. Maya stood at the center and felt her stomach churn. "This is insane," she whispered. "We perform in subway tunnels. How are we supposed to fill this space?" Vincent walked to the edge of the stage, looking out at the empty field. "Same way we fill the subway. We tell the truth and hope somebody wants to hear it. That's not helpful. It's the only thing that's helpful. The moment we start trying to be something we're not, we've already lost." They practiced on that stage for 2 hours, getting used to the acoustics, the space between them, the way their sound traveled differently in open air. It was strange playing without the ambient noise of trains and crowds, without the echoing tunnel walls that had become so familiar. On the drive back, Vincent asked the question Maya had been dreading. "Your brother's graduation, what time does it start?" 11 in the morning. "And the festival?" "We go on at 8 p.m. So you could do both." Maya had already done the math 100 times. The graduation was 2 hours away. The ceremony would last at least 2 hours. Factor in traffic, family photos, the obligatory lunch her mother would want. She'd be cutting it impossibly close. "Technically, yes," she admitted. "But what if something goes wrong? What if there's traffic or the ceremony runs late, or what if you stop looking for reasons to sabotage yourself?" The words hit harder than they should have. Maya stared out the window, watching the city blur past. "That's not what I'm doing, isn't it? You've been waiting for an excuse to back out of this festival since we agreed to do it. Every practice you find something to criticize. Every small problem becomes a disaster. You're building an escape route. I'm being realistic. You're being scared. There's a difference." She wanted to argue, but she couldn't. He was right. Some part of her had been waiting for permission to quit, to go back to the safe, small life she understood. The festival was too big, too risky, too much like hope. The week before the performance, something unexpected happened. Carlos came to watch them practice at the subway platform. He'd never done that before. Never showed interest in Maya's music beyond polite questions about how work went. He stood at the back of the crowd, hands in his pockets, watching intently. When they finished their set, he walked over. "That was really good," he said, and Maya could tell he meant it. "Thanks." She felt awkward, unsure how to accept praise from her little brother. "I need to tell you something." Carlos looked uncomfortable. "I've been kind of a jerk lately." "About the graduation thing?" "No, you were honest. I needed to hear it. Maybe. But I realized I was putting my stuff on you, my guilt about how much you've sacrificed. That's my problem, not yours." He paused. "I want you to do the festival. Really do it. Don't spend the whole time worrying about getting to my graduation. Don't rush through your performance thinking about me. Just be there, in that moment. But I promised. I release you from the promise. Seriously." Carlos smiled, and for a second he looked so much like their father that Maya's chest ached. "I'll be fine if you miss it." I won't be fine if you spend the rest of your life resenting me for being the reason you gave up another dream. Maya pulled him into a hug, something she hadn't done in months. He was taller than her now. When had that happened? When had her baby brother become someone wise enough to set her free? That night she made a decision. She would go to Carlos's graduation in the morning. She would be fully present for it, not thinking about the festival or checking her watch. Then she would leave, drive to Riverside, and give the performance everything she had. If she was doing this, she was doing it right. No half measures. No escape routes. 3 days before the festival, Vincent showed up at morning practice with news. I got a call last night, he said, from a producer I used to work with. He saw our videos online, wants to know if I'm available for studio work next month. Maya felt happy for him and inexplicably sad at the same time. That's great. That's what you wanted. Yeah, but I told him I needed to talk to you first. Why? Because if this festival goes well, we might have more opportunities. Together. And I don't know if I want to go back to session work if it means giving up what we've built. The weight of his words settled over them. This partnership that started as a temporary arrangement had become something neither of them had planned for, something that mattered. Let's see how the festival goes, Maya said carefully. Then we can figure out what comes next. Deal. But as they started their practice, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that whatever happened at Riverside, nothing would ever be the same again. For better or worse, she'd stepped out of her small, controlled world, and there was no going back. The morning of Carlos's graduation arrived with perfect weather. Clear skies, gentle breeze, the kind of day that felt like a good omen. Maya stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her dress for the third time, trying to calm the nervous energy buzzing through her body. Her mother appeared in the doorway, leaning on her cane. She looked tired but happy, dressed in her best outfit with her hair done up nicely. These days, getting ready for big events took her twice as long as it used to, but she never complained. You look beautiful, Mija, her mother said softly. Thanks, Mom. Maya turned away from the mirror. You ready? Almost. But first, sit down. I need to tell you something. Maya's stomach clenched. Conversations that started this way were never simple. But she sat on the edge of her bed, waiting. Her mother lowered herself into the chair by the window, the one she spent most afternoons in when the medication made her too tired to move around. I know what you've given up for us. Carlos and me. Don't argue, I know. A mother sees everything even when her daughter tries to hide it. Mom, let me finish. Her mother's voice was gentle but firm. When you left Juilliard, you told me it was your choice, that you wanted to come home. But I knew the truth. You came back because you were scared I would die and Carlos would be alone. Maya felt tears threatening, but she held them back. You needed me. Yes, we did. And you showed up. You've been showing up every single day for 3 years. But tonight at that festival, I need you to show up for yourself. Can you do that? I'm going to try. Her mother reached over and squeezed her hand. Good. Because I didn't raise you to be a martyr. I raised you to be brave enough to want things for yourself. The graduation ceremony was held at the high school auditorium, the same place Maya had graduated from 7 years earlier. She sat between her mother and an empty seat they'd saved for Carlos's best friend, watching the students file in wearing their caps and gowns. Carlos walked past their row and caught her eye. He grinned, giving her a subtle thumbs up. Maya smiled back, feeling a mix of pride and bittersweetness. Her baby brother was graduating, heading to college in the fall, growing up and away from her, the way he was supposed to. The ceremony was long, filled with speeches about futures and possibilities and doors opening. Maya tried to focus on the words, but her mind kept drifting to the festival, to the stage waiting for her, to Vincent, who was probably already on the road to Riverside setting up their equipment. They'd agreed to travel separately. He'd go early to handle sound check and technical details. She'd come after the graduation. It was the only way to make both events work. Carlos's name was called. He walked across the stage with confidence, accepted his diploma, and paused to wave at them before moving along. Her mother cried. Maya felt her throat tighten with emotion. This was what mattered. Family. Being present for the people you loved. How could a festival performance compete with this? But even as she thought it, another voice whispered in her head. Why do things have to compete? Why can't you have both? After the ceremony came the photos. Endless photos. Carlos with his friends, Carlos with his diploma, Carlos with family, Carlos throwing his cap in the air. Maya checked her watch subtly. 2:30. She had 5.5 hours before she went on stage. The drive was 2 hours. That left her 3.5 hours of buffer time. Plenty of time. Unless it wasn't. Her mother noticed her anxiety. "Go," she said quietly while Carlos was posing with his friends. "What?" "Go to your festival." "Carlos won't mind. He's busy with his friends anyway. We were supposed to have lunch together. And we will, another day. Right now you need to go." Maya hesitated. The responsible thing was to stay. To see the day through completely. To not make her own needs the priority. But Carlos had released her from that promise. Her mother was doing the same. The only person still holding her hostage to obligation was herself. She walked over to Carlos, interrupting his conversation with a girl who was clearly more than just a friend. "Hey, I need to go." Carlos looked at his watch. "Yeah, you should probably hit the road. Traffic's going to be bad. You sure you don't mind? Are you serious right now?" He laughed. "I'm surrounded by my friends about to go to a party, and you're asking if I mind you leaving to perform at a huge festival? Get out of here." Maya hugged him tightly. "I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you too. Now go be amazing." The drive to Riverside should have taken 2 hours. It took 3. There was an accident on the highway that backed up traffic for miles. Maya sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel, watching the minutes tick by on her dashboard clock. 5 o'clock became 6. 6 became 7. She called Vincent 4 times. The first 3 calls went to voicemail. The 4th time he answered. "Where are you?" His voice was tense. "Still an hour out." "There was an accident. Traffic's completely stopped. Maya, we go on in an hour and 15 minutes, I know. I'm going to make it. What if you don't?" "I will." But the doubt in his voice matched the fear in her chest. What if she didn't make it? What if, after all of this, she failed both commitments, missed the graduation celebration and the festival performance? The traffic finally started moving at 7:15. Maya drove faster than she should have, weaving between lanes, her heart pounding in her throat. The festival grounds appeared in the distance at 7:45. She parked illegally and ran. The backstage area was chaos. Crew members rushed around with equipment. Other performers warmed up in corners. The sound of the opening band filtered through the speakers, loud and energetic. Maya pushed through the crowd searching for Vincent. She found him pacing near their designated area, trumpet case in hand. When he saw her, relief and anger crossed his face simultaneously. "You cut it close, and I'm here, aren't I? With 15 minutes to spare. We haven't done sound check. We haven't warmed up. Vincent." Maya set down her trumpet case and grabbed his shoulders. "I'm here. We're doing this. Everything else is just noise." He took a deep breath, then nodded. Okay, let's do a quick warm-up." They found a quiet corner and ran through scales together. Maya's fingers felt stiff from the drive, her lips not quite ready for the demands of performance. But there was no time to worry about that. A crew member appeared wearing a headset and holding a clipboard. "You're up in 5, she said. "Follow me." They walked through the backstage area toward the stage entrance. Maya could hear the crowd now. Thousands of voices talking and laughing, waiting for the next act. Her legs felt weak. Her mouth went dry. "I can't do this," she whispered. Vincent stopped walking. He turned to face her, and his expression was softer than she'd ever seen it. "Yes, you can. You're the woman who stood up to me in a subway tunnel, who built a life out of nothing but music and determination, who drove through traffic hell to be here. You can absolutely do this. What if I mess up? Then we mess up together. That's the deal." The stage manager was waving them forward urgently. Through the curtain, Maya could see the massive crowd, the lights, the overwhelming reality of what they were about to do. She thought about Carlos, probably at a party right now with his friends, celebrating his future. She thought about her mother, home resting, proud of both her children. She thought about the 3 years she'd spent playing in tunnels, invisible and safe. This was the opposite of safe. This was terrifying. Vincent extended his hand. "Ready?" Maya took his hand. "No, but let's go anyway." They walked onto the stage together. The lights hit them immediately, bright and hot. The crowd was enormous, a sea of faces stretching back farther than she could see. Someone spoke into a microphone, introducing them, but Maya couldn't hear the words over the pounding of her own heartbeat. Then the lights shifted. The crowd quieted. And it was just her and Vincent standing in the center of that massive stage with their trumpets and their story. Vincent looked at her. She looked back, and without words they had the conversation they'd been having since that first duel in the subway. Ready always, trust me? With everything. Now Maya lifted her trumpet to her lips. Vincent did the same and they began to play. The first notes were shaky. Maya's fingers fumbled a transition she'd practiced 100 times. But Vincent was there, adjusting his melody to cover her mistake, giving her space to recover. Within 30 seconds, they found their rhythm. The piece they'd called Beginning filled the festival grounds. It was about early passion, about falling in love with music before the world complicated everything. Maya poured herself into it, forgetting about the crowd, the pressure, everything except the conversation she was having with Vincent through their instruments. When they transitioned into middle, the crowd was completely silent. This was the piece about loss and compromise, and Maya played it thinking about her mother's illness, about leaving Juilliard, about all the dreams she'd buried to survive. Vincent's trumpet answered with his own losses, the career that rejected him, the marriage that ended, the years of wondering if he'd made the wrong choices. The music was raw and honest and painful. Maya felt tears on her face, but she kept playing. Then came, here, the final piece, the one about rediscovery and unexpected partnerships and finding yourself again. This was where they usually improvised. Let the moment guide them. Maya hesitated, unsure if she could trust herself to improvise in front of 15,000 people. But Vincent launched into a melody she'd never heard before. Something new. Something just for this moment, and Maya understood. This was the point. Not to play it safe, but to leap together into the unknown and see what happened. She answered his melody with one of her own. They traded phrases built on each other's ideas, created something that had never existed before and would never exist again in quite the same way. The music swelled and soared and finally, gradually, came to rest on a single perfect note that they held together until their breath ran out. The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then the crowd erupted. Maya lowered her trumpet, breathing hard, tears still streaming down her face. Vincent was crying too. They looked at each other across the stage and started laughing, the kind of exhausted, relieved laughter that comes after you've survived something you weren't sure you could survive. The crowd was on their feet. The applause was deafening, and Maya realized something profound. She'd spent 3 years trying to be invisible, and in this moment she'd never felt more seen. They stumbled off stage in a daze. Maya's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her trumpet. A crew member handed her a bottle of water. She drank half of it before realizing she was crying and laughing at the same time. Vincent pulled her into a hug. Not a brief, polite hug, a real one. The kind that said we just survived something incredible together. We did it, he whispered. We actually did it. Before Maya could respond, people swarmed them. Festival organizers congratulating them. Other performers shaking their hands. Someone taking photos. The talent scout who'd discovered them appeared with 2 business cards. I have people who want to talk to you, she said, pressing the cards into Maya's palm. Record labels. Serious people. Call them tomorrow. Maya stared at the cards like they might disappear if she blinked. One was from a jazz label she'd dreamed about during her Juilliard days. The other belonged to a music producer whose name she recognized from album credits. This is real? She asked. Very real. That performance was special. People are already talking about it online. The scout smiled. You two have something authentic. Don't let anyone change that. The rest of the night blurred together. They watched the headlining act from the side of the stage. They talked to industry people whose names Maya immediately forgot. They signed autographs for fans who'd recorded their performance and wanted to tell them how much it meant. Around midnight, they finally escaped to Vincent's car in the parking lot. They sat in silence for a few minutes, too exhausted and overwhelmed to speak. What happens now? Maya asked finally. I don't know. We call those numbers tomorrow, see what they want, and then Vincent turned to look at her. What do you want to happen? It was the question Maya had been avoiding. What did she want? For 3 years, she'd only let herself want small practical things. Enough money for bills, her mother healthy, Carlos graduating. Wants that felt achievable, safe, but this was different. This was the kind of want that felt dangerous. The kind that could break her heart. I want to keep playing, she said softly. Not just in subways, not just for survival, I want to make music that matters. Then let's do it. It's not that simple. I have responsibilities. My mom, the bills, I know. I'm not saying quit everything tomorrow and become a starving artist. I'm saying let's see where this goes. Together. We'll figure out the rest as we go. Together. The word settled into Maya's chest, warm and terrifying. She drove home at 2 a.m, exhausted but too wired to sleep. When she crept into the apartment, she found her mother awake in the living room, reading a book by lamplight. "You're still up?" Maya asked, couldn't sleep without knowing how it went. Her mother set down the book. "So, how was it?" Maya sank onto the couch beside her and told her everything. The traffic, the panic, the performance, the business cards. Her mother listened without interrupting, a small smile playing at her lips. "I'm proud of you," her mother said when Maya finished. "Not for the performance, though I'm sure it was beautiful. I'm proud because you showed up for yourself, finally." "I'm scared, Mom. What if this goes nowhere? What if I get my hopes up and it all falls apart?" "Then it falls apart and you survive it. You're good at surviving, Mija. Maybe too good. Maybe it's time you learned how to do more than just survive." The next morning, Maya called the first number on the business cards. A woman answered and scheduled a meeting for Wednesday. The second call went similarly. By noon, she had 2 meetings lined up with people who wanted to talk about recording contracts and touring opportunities. She called Vincent to tell him. He already had his own meeting scheduled. "This is happening fast," Maya said. "It is. You having second thoughts?" "About 100 of them." "Me too. But let's see what they offer before we panic." The meetings were surreal. The jazz label wanted to sign them as a duo, offering a small advance to record an album. The producer wanted them for a documentary soundtrack he was scoring, meaningful work that would pay better than subway performances. They had options. Real tangible options, the kind that could change their lives. But Maya kept thinking about the ground rules they'd set at the beginning. This was supposed to be temporary, a 2-week trial that had accidentally become something more. They'd never discussed what happened if it got serious. If it became a real partnership. A week after the festival, Vincent asked her to meet him at the community center where they'd practiced. When she arrived, he was already there setting up equipment. "I have something to show you," he said. He played a new piece, a solo trumpet arrangement that was technically brilliant and emotionally hollow. When he finished, he looked at her expectantly. "It's good," Maya said carefully. "Really good, but it sounds like you're playing alone, even though I'm right here." Vincent set down his trumpet. "The producer who called about session work? He wants an answer. Good money, steady work, everything I thought I wanted." Maya's stomach dropped. "Are you taking it?" "I don't know. That's why I called you here. Because I realized something. These past 2 months with you have been the best music I've made in years. Maybe ever. Not because my playing got better technically, but because I remembered why I started playing in the first place." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't want to go back to session work if it means giving this up. But I also can't ask you to turn down opportunities for your career, just because I want to keep playing with you. That wouldn't be fair." Maya understood what he was really asking. Where did they go from here? How did 2 people with separate lives and separate dreams build something together without losing themselves? "I got offered a teaching position," she said, "at a music school across town. It would pay enough to cover my mom's expenses and help Carlos with college. I'd have benefits, stability. Everything I've been trying to achieve for 3 years. That's amazing. You should take it." "I know I should. But I keep thinking about what you said, about how we sound better together than apart. And I wonder if stability is worth it if I have to go back to being invisible." They sat in silence for a while, both of them wrestling with impossible choices. Finally, Vincent spoke. "What if we try something crazy?" "How crazy?" "What if you take the teaching job for the stability? I take some session work to pay my bills. But we keep playing together, not full-time, not as our only thing, but as the thing that matters most. Weekends, evenings, whenever we can." "That sounds exhausting." "Probably, but trying to give this up sounds worse." Maya thought about it. It wasn't the fairy tale ending where they became famous overnight and all their problems disappeared. It was messy and complicated and would require constant juggling. But it was real. It was possible. "Okay," she said. "Let's try it." They started small. Maya took the teaching position and loved it more than she expected. Working with young musicians reminded her why she'd fallen in love with music in the first place. Vincent did session work 3 days a week and stopped resenting the commercial projects because they funded what he really cared about. On weekends, they performed, sometimes at the subway station where they'd met, sometimes at small clubs that started booking them after seeing their festival videos, sometimes at private events that paid surprisingly well. They recorded an album over 6 months, working in a friend's studio during off hours. It wasn't a big label production, just honest music made by two people who'd found each other at the right moment. They called it unexpected because that's what it was. An unexpected partnership, an unexpected second chance, an unexpected reminder that good things can start in the middle of ordinary days. The album didn't become a huge commercial success, but it found its audience. People who'd seen them in the subway, people who'd been at the festival, people who recognized something true in the music, the sound of two broken people putting themselves back together one note at a time. 6 months after their festival performance, Carlos's school asked Maya to perform at the graduation ceremony. She stood on that stage with Vincent beside her, playing for her brother and hundreds of families celebrating their children's futures. Carlos sat in the front row with their mother. When Maya caught his eye during the performance, he was smiling. Not just proud of her music, but proud that she'd finally stopped sacrificing herself for everyone else. That she'd learned it was possible to be both a good sister and her own person. After the ceremony, as families took photos and celebrated, Maya packed up her trumpet. Her mother approached, moving more easily now than she had a year ago. The physical therapy finally paying off. "You looked happy up there," her mother said. "I am happy." "Good. That's all I ever wanted for you. Not success or fame or money. Just happiness. Permission to want things for yourself." Maya hugged her mother, feeling tears threaten again. "Thank you. For understanding. For letting me go. I never held you, Mia. You held yourself. I just reminded you that you could let go." That evening, Vincent and Maya performed at their regular Sunday spot in the subway. The crowds were smaller than the festival, the setting less glamorous than the clubs. But Maya didn't mind. This was where it started. Two musicians finding each other in an underground tunnel, challenging each other to remember why they played. They still drew crowds. People still recorded them on phones and dropped money in their cases. But more importantly, they still pushed each other to be better, to dig deeper, to tell the truth through their music. Between songs, during a break while a train passed, Vincent turned to her. "No regrets?" Maya thought about the question seriously. She thought about Juilliard, about the dreams she'd buried, about the 3 years she'd spent just surviving. She thought about where she was now, teaching, playing, building something sustainable and meaningful. "No regrets," she said. "This is exactly where I'm supposed to be." And for the first time in years, she believed it. They lifted their trumpets and played again, two voices in conversation, telling the story of people who'd lost themselves and found each other in the most unexpected way. The story of a duel that became a partnership. The story of a melody that changed everything. The crowd gathered, listening to music that was real and raw and honest. And in a city where millions of people passed each other every day without really connecting, two musicians proved that sometimes all it takes is one unexpected moment to change the direction of a life. The music played on, and Maya finally was free.